Hello guys, Fish767 here. Today I'm going to go over a very interesting deck. It's probably not the best deck, but it's a very janky deck and I think that you'll enjoy it. So I'm going to start breaking down this deck going backwards. We're going to start with the win con and then we're going to go with the plan to get there because that's the only way that I think it'll actually make sense. So our win con is actually a combo. We're going to use Bolus the Citadel, which lets us look at the top card of our library, and we can play it by paying life equal to the converted mana cost of that card. And we're also going to be using Karn's Temporal Sundering, which is a legendary sorcery, which means that we have to have a legendary permanent on the field in order to cast it. And that permanent has to be a creature or planeswalker specifically. So that's not going to be a big problem because our deck is mostly legendary cards, so getting one of those out should not be an issue. But this target player takes an extra turn after this one, and then return up to one target non-land permanent to his owner's hand, exile Karn's Temporal Sundering. And we actually need Karn's Temporal Sundering to exile, because we're going to be using, where is it? We're going to be using Rift Sweeper, if I can find it. There it is. We're going to be using Rift Sweeper to put the Karn's Temporal Sundering back into our deck. So what Rift Sweeper says is a 2-mana elf. It says when it comes into play, choose target face-up card that's removed from the game. Its owner shuffles it into his or her library. So here's how things are going to go. We're going to empty our library. Then we're going to cast Karn's Temporal Sundering. It's going to exile itself. Then we're going to play Rift Sweeper to put Karn's Temporal Sundering back on top of our deck. We're going to use Bolus the Citadel to play Karn's Temporal Sundering, and then we're going to bounce the Rift Sweeper back to our hand off of Karn's Temporal Sundering. Now, the issue with doing this is that we have to put Rift Sweeper back into play every time, which is going to cost us 2 mana. And then we also have to gain life in order to be able to continue to cast Karn's Temporal Sundering off the top of our deck. So how we're going to gain the life is we have an enchantment called Overgrown Estate. It's a 3-mana Abzan enchantment. Sacrifice a land, you gain 3 life. That's all that it does. So we're going to sacrifice 2 lands, which will gain us 6 life, which will allow us to continue to do this combo to take infinite turns. The other thing that we have to do is we have to be able to cast Rift Sweeper multiple times. Now, we run 40 lands, and a lot of these we can actually get in the colors that we need to continue to do this, but that's not really going to be super duper helpful because ideally we'd set up multiple turns that we can take in a row before actually going to them, just to reduce the chance that we goof up the combo and lose. So how we're going to be getting the mana is with a land called Cascading Cataracts. It is indestructible. It says pay 5, tap it, add 5 mana, and any combination of colors to our mana pool, and it also taps for colorless. And so what we're going to be using is we're going to use specifically, give me a second and I'll find it, the Locust God, which says whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue, red, and green insect creature token with flying and haste. And we're also going to be using Scoot Swarm, which has landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under control, we create a 1/1 green insect creature token. And then if we control 6 or more lands, we create a copy of Scoot Swarm instead. And so we're going to use that with draws and landfalls to cause us to gain enough creatures to then sacrifice them to Ashnod's Altar to gain 2 colorless mana for every single creature that we sacrifice. Then we're going to use that mana with Cascading Cataracts to get 5 mana and any combination of colors. And that can be whatever we need. Typically, it will be green when we're comboing off, but it can be any color that we need. So then we're going to sacrifice the Cascading Cataracts to Overgrown Estate, which will gain us 3 life. And the reason why we're sacrificing them, another reason, I guess, and how we're going to continue this combo is with Slagurk, the Overslime. A 3-mana ooze with Trample. Whenever a land card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 counter on Slagurk, the Overslime. Remove 3 +1/+1 counters from Slagurk and return it to its owner's hand. When it leaves the battlefield, return up to 3 target lands from your graveyard to your hand. So if we send 3 lands to the graveyard, then we can remove the 3 counters from Slagurk to put those 3 lands back into our hand. And that will gain us 9 life, which is more than enough to continue doing the combo. So what we will end up doing is we'll use Cascading Cataracts to gain the colored mana that we need, which will be at least 1 blue and 2 green when we're comboing. Then we're going to sacrifice Cascading Cataracts along with, let's see, where is it? Along with Drownyard Temple, which says that we can pay 3 mana to return it from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and then any other land, it doesn't matter what the other land is. So then what we can do is we should have plenty of mana left from Ashnod's Altar due to sacrificing all these Scoot Storms, which will be generating a bunch of Scoot Storms. And we're also going to need Kodama the East Tree on the field. which says whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to activate Slugurk with the 3 lands in the graveyard to return Slugurk and the 3 lands back to our hand. Then we are going to, we need 3 lands back to our hand, not including what was it called? I forgot. Drown Your Temple. We need Drown Your Temple to stay in the graveyard. So you can sacrifice 4 lands if you want, and then you'll get 3 back. And then we need Drown Your Temple in the graveyard. But we'll basically pay 3 to put Drown Your Temple from a graveyard onto the battlefield tapped, which is going to trigger Kodama, and it will also trigger Scoot Swarm. And so then that combo between Kodama and Scoot Swarm will let us put all of our lands from our hand into play, as well as any cards that we have in our hand that cost 0 mana, but we don't have any of those in the deck, so just all the lands. So we'll put all of our lands back into play, which is going to generate a whole bunch more Scoot Swarms to sacrifice to the Ashnod's Altar. And then we're going to cast Slugurk using the mana off of the Cascading Cataracts, and then Slugurk will trigger Kodama to put Rift Sweeper back into play. And this will let us continue the combo essentially forever, gaining extra life, and also it will cause us to take infinite turns. Now, the issue is that in order to do this combo, we have to have 0 cards in our deck, except for Karn's Temporal Sundering. And so it's kind of hard to get down to exactly 0 cards left in the deck, but we have different ways to do it. We have Tatyova Mythic Druid, which lets us, whenever land enters the battlefield under control, we gain a life and draw a card. And the Get Rug Monster, whenever land goes to the graveyard, we draw a card. We have other ways to draw cards, specifically the most notable being the Locust God. Whenever we draw a card, we make a 1/1 blue, red, and green, or blue and red inside creature token with haste. And then we also run the Planeswalker Huatli Radiant Champion. If you can get the emblem off of Huatli, it says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under control, you may draw a card, and that's -8. So if you can get the emblem off of Huatli, which is not hard to do, it should only take you 2 turns, and you play Locust God after that, you will generate infinite insects, and then you can draw your deck out. Like, you will be able to generate insects for as many cards as there are on deck, and then you can draw all those cards, but it's also a May ability, so you don't have to draw them all. But, like I said, it's hard to get down to exactly the right number of cards in our deck. And so oftentimes we'll end up drawing too many, so we run the Book of Exalted Deeds, which says it's a 3 mana, 3 white specifically, to play a legendary artifact. And then you pay 3 white, tap it, exile it, and then you put an enlightened counter on target angel, and it gains you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game, activate only as a sorcery. Well, that's not good enough, so we're going to run Arcane Adaptation, Xenograph, and Maskwood Nexus, which all do basically the same thing. When they come into play, either you choose a creature type, that would be for the Xenograph and the Arcane Adaptation, or otherwise you just don't do anything. And basically, you're going to choose Angel, and that's going to make all of our creatures in the deck or on the field Angels. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use Kamal, Heart of Krosa, to pay 1 and a green, and until the end of turn, target land you control becomes a 1/1 elemental creature with Vigilance, Indestructible, and Haste. It's still land. That will then make it an Angel, so then we're going to activate the Book of Exalted Deeds to make it so that that card gains, we cannot lose the game and our opponents cannot win the game. So then, if we draw too many cards, it's not a big issue because we can't lose the game. So that's that part of the plan. And another thing to note is that the Book of Exalted Deeds will exile itself, but we don't really care too much about that because we can just use Rift Sweeper to put it back into our deck, and then we can get it out and put that onto more lands. Now, ideally, what we want to do, this is the ideal play, but it's not going to happen every game. It probably won't happen very many games at all. But with Nissa, Who Shakes the World, we'd like to get her emblem, which says lands you control have Indestructible, and then she also would let us search for any number of forest cards, put them onto the battlefield, tapped, and then shuffle, but we only run 2 forests anyway, so that doesn't matter. But the emblem with lands you control have Indestructible means that we can animate a Plains, and the Plains will permanently have Indestructible, because there's currently no way to get rid of emblems. And then we can make the Plains an Angel, and then give the Plains, we cannot lose the game, our opponents cannot win the game. And the reason why I'm saying Plains is because Plains is the best land to use in this scenario, followed by mountains, and then I'd go with islands, then forests, and finally swamps, and that's mostly because there are cards that can turn forests and swamps into creatures, and then a lot of big scary things have Island Walk. And as far as I know, Plains is the only land type in the game that there's not an enchantment that says if an opponent would tap a Plains, gain a life. So, but there is one for mountains, but I don't think that there's one for Plains. So that's why I'm saying the Plains. Otherwise, if you don't have Nissa's Emblem, Cascading Cataracts is actually the best one because it's the only indestructible land that we run that's not an artifact. The rest of our indestructible lands are artifacts, which includes every single bridge, along with let's see, along with Darksteel Citadel. I'm actually missing one of the bridges. I'm missing the Azurius Bridge because I just don't own it, so it's not in the deck list. But you could put it in and just take out something else. It doesn't matter what. So that's the idea of the entire deck. Now we run a lot of other cards to facilitate getting there. So I'm going to go over some of those cards. So we've got Gretchen Titchwillow, which says pay 4, draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. We've got Azusa, which gives us 2 additional land drops. Kefnet, which says pay 4, draw a card. Then you may return a land you control to its owner's hand. We also run Rada, Heart of Keld. We can look at the top card of our library anytime. We may play land cards from the top of our library. We've got Zerta, which will reduce the activated abilities that aren't mana abilities it'll reduce them to 2 less, but not any lower than 1. So basically that's going to reduce Gretchen's ability down to just a green and a blue, and it's going to reduce Kefnet's ability down to 1 and a blue. But if we can use Spark Double to get a copy of Zerta, then that will reduce Kefnet's ability to 1 blue, which is actually pretty good for us. Especially because we are also running Soul of New Phyrexia, pay 5 permanents to control, gain indestructible until the end of turn. If we've got 2 copies of Zerta out, then that will be 1 mana to give everything that we control indestructible. So that's very good. And I think I've gone over all of our land stuff pretty much. So then we also run Thassa to flicker the Rift Sweeper at the end of the turn, which could potentially get us something back in case we're not actually able to pull off the combo with Karn's Temporal Sundering right away. We can cast Karn's Temporal Sundering, flicker the Rift Sweeper, put it back, and then try to win on the next turn if it's not possible. We also run Part the Water Veil as a backup plan in case something happens to Karn's Temporal Sundering. It's not as good as Karn's Temporal Sundering is. It requires a little bit more work to actually win. Then we have Garruk the Unleashed, which emblem would let us search for a creature and put it into play at the end of our turn. And we also have Tezzeret, whose emblem would let us go grab a permanent at the end of the turn and put it into play. So both of those are very good. Lord Windgrace does stuff with lands, which is why we run it. The Wanderer prevents non-combat damage, so it stops a couple combos from killing us, but it also lets us exile stuff. Teferi's just in there as a test card to see how good it is. Same with Gaedron. And then Basri Ket is a potential win con if we have to with the emblem, if we can take infinite turns, and all of our other win cons are offline, which that's going to be like a really fringe case, because we can get stuff back from exile. So unless Rift Sweeper gets exiled, everything should still be online. But in case everything goes terrible, Basri Ket's emblem can get us out of a big mess. Then we run a couple tutors to spark, a few like Explore and Growth Spiral as ramp, Cosmic Intervention to just protect ourselves. And let's see, what else do we have here? We got Nim Deathmantle in case things go bad. Eldrazi Monument to give everything indestructible. Mealhook Massacre is a really nice legendary card because it's only 2 mana, so Sisay can tutor it out as long as we've got another legendary thing on the field. Because basically, so what Sisay says, I didn't actually explain her. She's a 3 mana human soldier, 2/2. It gets +1/+1 for each color among other legendary permanents we control, and then we can pay Wooburg, search our library for a legendary permanent card with converted mana cost less than Sisay's power, put the card on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So the main idea with Sisay is that we can assemble the pieces that we need to get our land engine going, which will hopefully get the Book of Exalted Deeds eventually, and then give a land indestructible. And then after that point, we can just go grab Locust God and Huatli, along with the Oath of Teferi to do Huatli's minus on the same turn that we play her. And then that will let us just go infinite to actually start the combo. Then we have Aura Shards just to destroy some stuff that could get annoying. Freya's Retribution is amazing because what we can do with Kamal is we can animate all of our lands. And then this will give angels we control tap destroy target creature with power less than this creature's power. And so because all of our lands will be angels, then all of our lands will have tap destroy target creature with power less than this creature's power. And they start out as 1/1s, but Kamal will pump them up to 4/4s during combat step. And then if we have a Chroma out, those will actually be pumped up to 7/7s or 8/8s, depending on how it ends up working, amongst other things. So they'll be pretty big, and so that would let us basically kill the entire board if we have to. So that's why that's in there. We have Kindred Boon, which says, enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. We're choosing Angels. Pay 2, put a Divinity counter on target creature control of the chosen type. Each creature you control with a Divinity counter has Indestructible. One thing to note is that if our lands stop being creatures and they're no longer indestructible if we put a Divinity counter on them, so we have to give them Indestructible through some other means. Although, literally, a tenth of our lands are indestructible anyway. Like, they just have the keyword Indestructible on them, so it doesn't matter very much. Then you got Search the Premises, which will basically protect our Planeswalkers and stuff and let us draw cards. And then for our lands, we run a couple bounce lands because those could be fun with Kodama and Scute Swarm, letting us get infinite Scute Swarms. Yeah, that's a thing that you can do. But it will also let us draw cards with Tatiova if we need to do that. We run Blighted Woodland to ramp us. We run a couple pathways. Dakmor Salvage, which goes really well with Gitrog Monster, which lets us sacrifice the Dakmor at the beginning of our upkeep, drawing us a card, but instead we can dredge 2 to put the Dakmor Salvage back into our hands, which potentially will hit another land, allowing us to draw an additional card. And then we'll just play the Dakmor Salvage again anyway. I'm trying to see. We run Ghost Quarter because we can tap it, sacrifice it, destroy target land. Now we're going to target one of our indestructible lands with it, and then we get to go search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield. And then because we put Ghost Quarter in our graveyard, if we can get that back, then we can continue to do this. So this is basically a repeatable tutor effect because we run indestructible lands. So that's one of the cool things about that card. But it can also be used to hit one of our opponent's lands if we need to. Then we got Croson Verge, which is a search land. Myriad Landscape, Search Land. Opal Palace is for our commander to buff her because she can only search for 6 without any other buffs when we have all 5 colors on the battlefield. And that's not enough to hit Kamal, which is an 8, so we can use Opal Palace to buff her a couple times if she ends up dying, which she probably will because this deck is basically a huge threat. And Sisei's automatically has a target on her back. We're going to run a couple like good lands, like Overgrown Farmland and Reliquary Tower too, I suppose. Give us no max hand size. Smoldering Marsh, of all the champions, and Verdant Catacombs just as a search land. So that's the general idea, and you do have to pretty much get the Reliquary Tower into your hand for the combo to start working the way that we want it to. But we also run Enduring Angel in case the game's going bad. This will stop us from dying one time. We have Lisa, which will hit it'll hit graveyard decks really hard, so that's why we run that. And then Raid Ange is good protection, amongst other things. So is Mila. Mila's very good protection. Whenever an opponent attacks one or more planeswalkers you control, put a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control, which is very good. And then whenever a permanent you control becomes the target of spell or ability opponent controls, you may draw a card. And then also we can get Luca's Emblem. That just wins us the game with Scute Swarm because it says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. And then we'll just end up with like a million Scute Swarms, so that should just win us the game. And getting that emblem is not that hard. So, and then Valky is very good for us if we get the combo down, or if we just need value, Valky will get it for us. He makes absolutely insane value. So I think that that's about everything in the deck that needs to be talked about. I think I've gone over practically every card. But that's why the deck is here, and that's how the deck runs. It's a very complicated little combo, but the idea was originally just to make a land into a Platinum Angel, an indestructible land into a Platinum Angel, mostly because it's very difficult to exile a land. It's not so hard to exile an artifact, which is why I was originally running Cascading Cataracts, is because it's the only indestructible non-artifact land that I own. But the thing is, now that Cascading Cataracts became a part of the combo to generate colored mana, you can't really make this your card because you're going to be sacrificing it, which will remove the static effect. So now you have to put it onto one of the other indestructible lands. The combo is extremely convoluted, but it works. It's the most janky combo I could think of. The only bad part is the price tag with this. It's $352. So if you happen to own all of these cards, feel free to build the deck. This is something absolutely stupid. I've playtested it one time, and it didn't do too hot because it was a one-on-one match. And the other deck was like zombies, get attacks in, do all that fun stuff. So it didn't work very well that time that I playtested it, but I'm confident in a multiplayer game. It could probably do okay, given enough time. So I probably would not buy it if I were you. I mean, a lot of these cards are very good on their own, so maybe this is something to like work towards if you wanted to test it out, but this would not be something that I just go drop a whole bunch of money on to go and buy. But I will put the deck list in the description. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all on the next one. Goodbye.